see some familiar faces. This is good, this is good. All right, so I am David Reese, Executive Director of the East Durham Children's Initiative. So I always start with some questions, because I think questions are really, really good. It allows me to gauge, allows you to gauge. So how many of you have heard of EDCI? Great, great, great. All right, so that's a couple of hands didn't go up. All right, so I guess now my next question is, for those of you that raised your hands, and you may regret raising your hands, but what is the East Durham Children's Initiative? And this is open, just blurt it out. Come on. It's an organization, that's good, that's a start. That's a start, that's real good. All right, so. Supports children in East Durham. This is like Jeopardy. This is really good. Based on the Harlem Children's Zone in New York. All right, all the answers are coming from over here, so we're going to come to this side because I saw some hands. All right, help me. What is the East Durham Children's Initiative? You raised your hands, so you know, right? But you just raised your hands. We weren't giving away anything free for you to raise your hands, but that's all right. So you're absolutely right, and I want you to think about this. I want you to embellish me for a minute. Think about what the world looks like when kids actually start at birth and they end up at college or with a career, right? I mean, that's like this wonderful place. When we think about our own kids, we think about our grandkids, that's the place where we want them to be. That's where we actually want them to end up. We want them to have success. I tell you, I've worked with families for years and years and years, and I've never met a family or a parent who says, you know what, I don't want my kids to succeed. I've never met one. Now, success is all relative, but, as we think about this perfect world, kids, they grow up, they leave our homes, they go get jobs, and at some point in time, they come back and they take care of us with all the money that they've made, right? Right. So, from an East Durham perspective, I'm going to ask you some more questions now, and I really want you to be honest, because this is where I think we know that we've begun to turn the corner. When you think of East Durham, what comes to mind? Poverty. Yeah. Poverty. Schools. What about schools? There are some new schools. Absolutely, absolutely. Anything else? East Durham, what comes to mind?
Joe's Diner.
Joe's Diner.
Yep.
How many hot dogs can you eat in 1 week? Someone over here?
I just, when I do go to East Durham, I think that this is not the Durham that's making the New York Times or the best of lists. So it's just a real contrast to, I don't know, what people read about.
It's not that 100 best places to live, right, in the country, right? Well, you know what? You're absolutely right. So this is really interesting. So I'm originally from New York, and I moved to Durham because I moved to Durham as opposed to Raleigh because Durham reminded me so much of New York. It was very diverse. It just reminded me of a city, but it reminded me of a city that was alive, right, outside of the city that's on the other side of 40. And so as we think about East Durham and we think about the work that we're doing in East Durham, those are all the thoughts that people have. You drive through East Durham and you lock your doors. We were actually with a funder today. We were driving through East Durham, and she says, you know what? Last time I was here, I saw prostitutes. I don't see them. Where are they? Guess what? They're no longer there. This community's changed, and this community's changed because there are people within the community that say, you know what? I want a different place to live. I want my children to have this tremendous opportunity, the same opportunity that you and I want for our kids, which is that they're going to go to college, get a job, come back 20 years later and take care of us with all the money that they've made. So what we've done is we've modeled the Harlem Children's Zone. For those of you that don't know, there's this guy in New York named Jeff Canada. What he in essence said was he was going to take this geographic area in New York and was going to get kids ready for college. And he fiddled around for a bit. He actually started at high school and failed. He went back to middle school, looking at middle school kids. He failed. And then he got smart and he went to where the data says go. And all the data says you should start at birth. And so he started at birth, and guess what? He started having this tremendous success. And he knew he was having success when he got his own American Express commercial. But he's got his own American Express commercial, and he's having a lot of success. So, we had some folks from Durham here, Minnie Fort Brown, Ellen Reckhow, Barker French, Wanda Boone. They went to New York, and they were just enamored. And when they got there, they said, we can recreate this. We can actually do this here in Durham. So we chose a geographic area, 120 blocks, which turns out to be the attendance zone for Y.E. Smith Elementary School. Have any of you visited Y.E. Smith recently? In the past? Yeah, right. When we looked at Y.E. Smith, it was the lowest performing school in the district. The question was asked to Dr. B. Coates. I remember when he first came on, he was doing a listening tour, and the question was, how long are you going to allow this school to fail? Because it had been failing for the last 10 years. As we looked at our 120 blocks, we realized it had one of the highest crime rates in the city. It had high poverty rates, had about a 25% home ownership rate, high teen pregnancy rates. You go down the list, and so we just realized, we were in the right place. And so we figured out that, we could borrow this Jeff Canada idea. We could go and start at birth. And so what we did was we broke people up into teams, and we said, listen, everyone just come spend some time with us. Come spend some time with us, and let's figure out how we're going to change the lives for kids in East Durham. Because guess what? If we figure it out in East Durham, we make it work in East Durham, we can take it any place else throughout our entire county. And we can make it work for other kids. Not only that, but then, we can take it to any place else in the country, similar sized environments, and just say, what? We figured it out. We figured out how to bring community partners together, get them outside of their silos, put them in this pipeline that starts at birth and ends with kids going ahead and having success. So, as we looked at these teams, this was really interesting. What we said was, what do kids need to have to be successful? Now, the key caveat is, I want you to take money totally off the table. Don't think money. Don't think what the cost is. Just think, well, what is it going to take for kids to have success? And so we had these teams. We had teams that focused on early childhood, elementary education, middle school education, family and health and such. But in essence, what these teams came up with were plans. We said in our minds, we were confident enough to think that, if we figure out exactly what kids need to have success, we can find the money. We may not find all the money, but we can find enough money to get us going and get us going in the right direction. And so that's exactly what happened. We put together what we call a pipeline of services. It starts at birth. We try to identify every child that's born in Durham using Durham Connects. How many of you have heard Durham Connects? That's a nurse home visiting service. So if you've had a child in Durham recently, you should have gotten a visit at the hospital before you left, which a nurse says, can I come visit you? Well, baby visit, a mom visit or such. This is an intervention that happens across the entire city. What we said to Durham Connects was come, work within these 120 blocks. Give us nurses to work solely within these 120 blocks as we begin to develop this pipeline. Well, then we went to Healthy Families Durham, and what we said to them was, you do in-home case management, and you do it through age 3. And so all the data says that we need to start as soon as the baby comes home. And so can you do this in-home case management back within the zone, and we'll get Durham Connects to give you their kids that they have identified, and you can do this case management with them. And then we went we actually realized we had a gap. And this is part of it. And so we realized that we had the gap between age 3 and when kids actually started school. So now I want to fast forward and I want to go to the elementary school. For those of you who have visited Y.E. Smith before, you recognize that this was not the place where you really want to send your kids. I probably wouldn't have sent my kids there just going to the school. I remember the very first day of school in 2010, I was looking at kids and they were walking through the doors and I said, you look excited to be here. Your hair is combed, your face is shining, it's the first day of school and your eyes are bright. You can't be the lowest performing kids in Durham. What is wrong? You don't look like the lowest performing kids. I was trying to figure out in my mind, what do low performing kids actually look like? Well, it can't be you guys, because you guys don't look low performing. Well, we started doing some extra work, and we started working with our largest partner, which is Durham Public Schools. And what we said was, Dr. B. Coates, let us give you kids who are ready to learn each and every day. You do education. Let us do all the other stuff. Let us address the food insecurity. Let us address the resource insecurity. Let us address the academic enrichment processes that happen both before school, after school, out of time school. But let us go ahead and give you those 3-year-olds as they transition to pre-K who are ready to learn each and every day. And so we started with just sort of like revamping the entire school. In essence, he did. What he did was he changed administration. We came in one day and there was a new principal. School went into a transformational model. And we came in and all of a sudden there was totally new administration. Hand-picked administrator, hand-picked team. This team had come from another school which had been doing really, really well in Durham, but was also the administrator who understood kids in East Durham. We then got really, really creative. What we said was we could take interventions that work with high wealth kids, that get results, and we could make them work for low wealth kids. And so this sounds pretty crazy when you think about it. You talk to the layperson about it. They say, you're going to take interventions that high wealth kids have had, they've had success with them, and then they've actually been able to afford them, and you're going to give them to low wealth kids, so how are they going to afford them? Well, for us, you know what, we're going to take money off the table, and we're going to do what we felt was in the best interest of kids. We were going to go out, we're going to raise the money to make sure that we're able to provide it. And so we went to the Hill Center. The Hill Center is connected with Durham Academy. They're next door to Durham Academy, and so we said, we want you to give us your intervention. We want you to bring it on in, and we're going to give it to pretty much every low-performing child in the school. All those children who are 1 to 2 grade levels behind, keep in mind, you're in the 3rd grade, you're reading on a 1st grade level. You're in the 5th grade, you're reading on a 3rd grade level. Those kids who are 1 to 2 grade levels behind, we're going to provide this intervention. And then we're going to provide the social and emotional supports as well, so that the family and child can continue to grow and to move. We decided then that we would get really, really, really creative. And we created what we call a parent advocate. So now I'm going to ask you another question. How many of you have kids? Grandkids, kids? Great. How many times has a teacher visited your home? For something good. All right, you got 1, 2. All right, that's great. So you think about this, right? As you educate children, and you educate children who live in poverty, how do you know who and what you're educating, right? You just do like what the book says. The book says that we start and we do page 1, page 2, but you're not addressing any of those other needs. You don't understand why the child's in school and the child's acting out today. You don't understand any of that because you're just doing what education says you should do. Well, for us, we decided to do something different because we know what we get when we continue to do the same thing over and over and over again. So we decided to think outside of the box. We created what we call parent advocates. These are folks who align with the grade level. And so we said, you know what? You align with pre-K and kindergarten. And you align with 1st grade. You align with 2nd. You align with 3rd. And you're going to visit every household back in the grade. You're going to go ahead, you're going to spend time with mom. If mom doesn't want to meet you at the house, fine, I don't care, sit on a porch. You can go to Joe's and you can meet with mom. It doesn't really matter where you meet with mom, dad, guardian, whoever it is, as long as you get back to the home and you figure out how we engage that parent. And then what we did was we decided to redefine what parental engagement looked like. So parental engagement, traditionally you think, well, I'm an engaged parent if I go to my PTA meeting, if I go to my parent-teacher conference, right? You put those 2 checks in the box and guess what? I'm a good parent, I'm engaged. Well, for us, we said, you know what? That doesn't always work for either working parents or parents who are experiencing some of the adverse effects to poverty, so we're going to dig a little deeper. And so we began working with parents on what time does your child go to bed at night? Who does your kids' homework with them? Does your child have a library at home? Where are the books? And so we started asking these questions. And then we said, you know what, we'll even come to school with you when you have your school meetings. When you have those educational meetings with your principal and with your teachers, because you know what, your kid's acting a fool in school, guess what, we're going to go with you. We're going to go, we're going to spend some time, and we're going to help sort of interpret what the school is telling you. And so this has progressed really, really well. Keep in mind, we started with kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade. We only had 4 parents throughout the entire grade level who said, you know what, you asked too many questions, David, Reese, I don't want you and your advocates coming back to my house. Everyone else said, sure, it sounds great. It sounds fabulous. So what we in essence began to do is we changed this dynamic, this culture. All of a sudden we had parents who were spending time back at the school. Whether it was for good things or whether it was for bad things, it really didn't matter. As long as they were just at the front door, that was what mattered. You see, because all the data says, if you have parents who are engaged, guess what? You got it. Kids who do better academically. That's like this no-brainer, right? And they paid some researcher to go figure this out. But that was the key, and that was the thing. So, we've done a lot of academic interventions, and we've done a lot of social interventions, and we've begun to have a lot of success. And so, remember when we started talking, we chose this area because, of all the negative markers or characteristics of a community, East Durham sort of had it, right? Statistically, it had it. But the school was also the lowest performing school in the district. And I remember our principal, Ms. Judd, we were looking at some school ratings and such in Durham Public Schools, and all we saw was Y.E. Smith just across the bottom. It was in every category, we won, we were last. And we started seeing a change, though. We started moving from the bottom and moving upwards. And keep in mind, we started this process, I came on in 2010, we started some summer programs, and then last year we started our first full year of implementation, with evaluation from the Center for Child and Family Policy, with our parent advocates, with the summer programming, with the Hill Center during the course of the school year, Hill Center during the course of the summer, and the numbers started changing. They started going up. Last year, we had the greatest amount of growth of any other Durham public school. We went from 48% overall composite proficiency on end of grade tests to 62% overall composite proficiency in end of grade tests. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. So now this isn't just EDCI, I can't take total credit for it. Remember, we have this tremendous instructional leader. She is just fabulous. What we also did was we changed culture in the school. This was no longer a place to retire. This wasn't a place where you could just come and kind of hang out. No, this was a place where we had to educate kids. This was a place where we had to engage kids. More importantly, this was a place where we actually had to engage parents. And we did trainings. We brought America's Promise Alliance down and we said, listen, we have to help our teachers learn how to engage parents. How do we engage parents who have been disenfranchised from this educational process their entire lives? And now we tell them we want them to come back in so they can help their children achieve an education. And so this has been this I think, this wonderful road in which we have engaged parents, we have children who are doing better. I think we have an engaged school. Now, it's not to say that we don't have a lot of work to do. Because I think buried within this composite rate of 62%, which really isn't anything to write home about unless you started out at 34, right? You only could go up from there anyway. There's this literacy component. Well, we still have literacy in the 40 percentiles. Kids still are struggling with literacy, and this is this big push from a Durham Public Schools perspective. It's a big push across the country. Literacy, literacy, literacy. How do we get kids to read better? How do we get them to do more? So this comes to this ask, right? You get up here and you get the mic for a little bit, so you know there's an ask coming, right? You know I was going to ask you for something. We went to the Rotary Club, downtown Rotary Club, and what we said was literacy is our big issue. We're struggling with it. We're having success, though. We're having national level success, we're having local level success, and so, but it's not good enough. Until we have every child in the school reading on grade level and performing at their highest level, it's just not good enough for us. We went to the Rotary and we said, help us. And they created what's called Rotary Rangers. Reading Rangers, actually, from downtown Rotary Club, which means then that they give an hour a week, they come in and they read with the child. Now, I wouldn't ask you to do something that I don't do myself, right? Right? Okay. So, I am a reading ranger as well. And so, at first I was saying, all right, I got to do this just because, I'm asking other people to do this, and this is, this is the right, sort of the right thing to do. Then I got to the classroom. And I started reading with kids, and I read with a different child. I go to Ms. Nixon's class, it's a third grade class. I read with a different child each week. And so some kids read a lot better than other kids. Some other kids, we're sitting there and we're going through the phonetic components of words and such. Other kids are just breezing through books. But then I also realized every time I walked in the classroom, boom, bright eyes. Hey, Mr. Reese, you're the EDCI guy. You coming to read? I'm coming to read on Tuesday. I'm not coming to read today, but I'm coming back to read on Tuesday. So I want you to think about this. I want you to think about, what is your role back in this? I think one way is I could ask you for a ton of money. I don't want to do that right now. What I really want you to do is I want you to get engaged. Because I want you to, think with me a little bit more. What if we make this work? What if we actually get kids in East Durham, the place that's just perpetually unsuccessful, what if we get kids actually ready for college or career? And what if we're able to do it the rest of Durham? This is where I need you to go ahead and get engaged. I need you to get engaged and come read with the child for a week. You actually can partner. Ellen Reckow and I got really creative. We couldn't do it all together at every week, so we partnered. She does one week, I do the other week. And then we're in the classrooms. I think you can go ahead and you can do it that way as well. You know, I want to leave you with why I really think this will work, why I think EDCI will work. What we've done is, in essence, we've created a security blanket around families. And so it's not just EDCI. It's the 20 other partners, the 35 other interventions that then create this pipeline of services. It's so that behind every intervention, there's something else. In front of every intervention, there's another intervention. And the beauty of this is, these are interventions which already existed in our wonderful city. You know, very little of this is actually created out of our, you know, what we think to be our very creative minds. These are all interventions which have just been here since whenever. But what we did was we said, leave your egos at the door. There are no egos. If we don't have an ego, nobody else can have an ego. What we said, the other thing was, it doesn't matter who gets the money. Yes, we have operational costs, but guess what? It doesn't matter who gets the money. As long as the money comes back into the zone and we're able to affect change for the children of East Durham, that's what matters. And the last thing we said to folks and partners who came in was, it's all about the kids. It's that simple. It's all about the kids, and leave the egos at the door. So with that, I want to thank you for having me this evening. I look forward to seeing you all at Y.E. Smith. Yes, you've all been invited now. I don't have a slide. I do have some cards, but everyone here is technologically savvy, correct? Everyone's got a smartphone for the most part? No? All right, but you're technologically savvy, so I want you to go to edci.org. Very, very simple. All right? It's hors, East Durham Children's Initiative.org. And next week, who uses Twitter in here? I got a couple of Twitter users. Come on. Thank you. Facebook? Ah, now we're talking. All right. What's that? Email. Yeah, email's good. Email's good. But, so next week we're taking our 14 kids to the White House. When Michelle Obama came down, she was excited about EDCI, and she said, this is a funny story. We're over at Shepherd's House United Methodist Church on Main and Driver. And we had we had moved several months before, and the bell downstairs wasn't working. So when the advance team from Michelle Obama came to come visit us, they couldn't get in. Right, that didn't go over very well. So Michelle Obama didn't come to East Durham, but instead she said, I'm going to come to Durham, and we're going to be flying in, bring kids and let me meet them on the tarmac. And so we brought some kids, and the kids were just, as you can imagine, tremendously excited after they got past the Secret Service and the guys standing on the roofs with the guns, right? But this turned into like this love fest. She hugged them, and they hugged her, and she hugged them, and they hugged her back. And in essence, you know, they just started talking. They started asking all these questions. They say, well, how old are you? I was like, you can't ask her that. But she answered. They said, well, where are your kids? They're in school. But then she also said, you know what, you go to a museum school. And we're like, yeah, we do. We go to Y.E. Smith. And they had these shirts on, right? So she had a little cheat sheet. And she said, well, the White House is a museum. You know what the next question was, right? When can we come? And so she calls me over, and she says, you get them there, and they'll have a personal tour. So guess where we're going? So we're going on this bus tour. So this is why I asked you about the Twitter, and this is why I asked you about the Facebook and the email. Because we're going on a tour to D.C. on Tuesday, and we'll be there for 3 days. We'll have a tour of the White House, the Smithsonian Air and Space, as well as the National Archives. These are 14 kids who are outstanding Tigers. Tigers are the school's mascot, and so they've been just identified by their teachers over and over for being continuous outstanding Tigers, and so they were chosen. These are 3rd through 5th graders. But the kids are going to be tweeting. We're taking DPS's social media team as well as our social media team. The kids are going to be blogging. They're going to be tweeting. They're going to be blogging. So for those of you who don't have Twitter, get Twitter so you can follow them. All right. They're going to also be taking pictures, and so it's going to be it's going to be a video. It'll be on Channel 4 sometime in the fall, I guess. Dr. Beacoats is seeing us off on Tuesday morning, and then they're going to do their PowerPoint presentation back to their peers and to their parents. You know, we're tying this right back into this parent engagement piece, this peer piece. This is this incentive. Listen, if you do the things you need to do in school, guess what? Maybe next year you go to meet the president. I want to stop here. What questions do you have? Right, there's this huge gap, and we used to say it echoes because it really does echo when we think about 3-year-olds, right? And 3-year-olds is a national issue. What do you do with 3-year-olds? 3 to 4. We were really fortunate last year that we received a pre-K. The year before that, we didn't have a pre-K, which I believe is just why we had such dismal performance numbers. Our evaluation stated that the evaluation team from Center for Child and Family Policy said we needed to look at early childhood advocates. We had so much success with our advocate program. Why not create advocates from the early childhood perspective that would actually visit folks back in the home? See, one of the things that we did from a Harlem Children's Home perspective was we looked at Harlem Children's Home. In Harlem, as any of you that have been in any urban area, people walk, right? You can recruit people all the time, and people will walk 5-10 blocks, and it's not an issue. Nobody's walking in Durham. So, we had to change our recruitment strategy in terms of how we identified these families. We recognized that home visiting was the key. Retention rates stayed the same, recruitment went up through the window. And so this year we'll add some early childhood advocates to really work within that 3-year-old space so we can begin actually engaging kids from the time they're born up until we're ready to get them back to college or get them back to elementary school. So the key to this really is kindergarten-ready parents. A lot of this work is with parents this early on, and so I see when you missed it, I was just giving like early childhood this big shout out. But this is the early childhood component, and this is where we'll invest our resources.
Opportunities for involvement.
Yes.
Let's give David a big hand.